Hello, everyone. It is another Friday. I'm Jeannie Walters, and this is another Experience Investigators Ask Me Anything session. So, we are so thrilled to have you here. Today, we're going to be talking about what your CEO needs to know about customer experience. This is something I hear about a lot. We need to get buy in from the C suite. So, today we're going to talk about 5 areas that every CEO should know about customer experience. Now, we are here for you. So get your questions ready, drop those into the chat. We will address anything that you want to cover regarding customer experience. So drop those questions in. I am joining you from a very cold Chicago today. And as always, we have our director of marketing, David Hornreich, with us in Seattle. David, how are things there?
Things are great. Most people look forward to Friday because it means it's almost the weekend. But I look forward to Friday because it means we get to do these.
Yay! Absolutely. And today is a special Friday. I'm going to give a little shout out to my parents who are celebrating 61 years of marriage. Pretty unbelievable. So, yay them and happy anniversary, mom and dad. And as we continue on, please tell us where you're joining us from. We love hearing from you. Tell us what the weather's like. Tell us anything that you think is good to know. And we'll have a great discussion after and answer all of your questions. So, with that, I think we can go ahead and get started. What do you think?
Let's do it.
All right, excellent. Well, as you know, when we talk to our CEOs, sometimes they look at us as customer experience leaders and they scratch their heads and they say, what is this really doing for our organization? And so that's why this topic is so near and dear to my heart, because I see a lot of CX leaders struggle with this. They want to share with their CEO the many benefits of customer experience, and yet somehow they can't get through to them. So today, I hope to give you some tools and language that you can use to talk to your CEO to get their buy in and really to support those customer centric CEOs who are already out there. So, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Jeannie Walters. I am founder and CEO of Experience Investigators. Here at Experience Investigators, we do a couple of things for clients. We provide advisory services, workshops, training, executive coaching, all sorts of fun things for CX teams on the ground doing the work. And then we also do a lot on the thought leadership side. So we provide a lot of webinars, keynotes, roundtables, that type of thing, as well as find all these resources on our blog, including our year of CX, which we decided to continue. So for those of you who were looking for that, who are worried about that ending, we decided to go ahead and keep providing those resources for you. So check that out as well. So when we talk about leadership, the one thing I hear over and over from CX leaders is that we need buy in. CX is a team sport. We need so much from other leaders in our organization that we need to build coalitions throughout our organization. And the most important relationship that we can have is the one with the top person, the CEO. Because if a CEO is customer centric, they will then be able to get that through to all of the other leaders. They'll be able to hold people accountable and they'll be able to support what you need as a customer experience leader in order to get, a better customer experience. We need resources, we need investment, we need team members, we need technology. The only person who can really make all of that happen for us is the CEO if they understand the importance of customer experience. Now, a lot of organizations still do not have robust teams that are addressing customer experience. And it's my belief that part of that is because of a lack of understanding of what customer experience really is and how it can actually benefit the organization, how it can drive goals forward, not just from a customer experience perspective, but from an organizational and a leadership perspective. So, when there are conflicting accountabilities and various stakeholders, it's easy to slip into that misunderstanding and think that customer experience is something that you talk about, that maybe you have a few people looking at, but you don't get everybody around. You don't rally the troops around it because it's just not a priority. So when we are tasked as customer experience leaders with maybe starting the customer experience journey for our organization or building the first team or providing better outcomes, when we're tasked with those things, it's really important that we use specific language. We make a case, we make the business case for customer experience. So let's talk about 5 things that your CEO, and really great CEOs do this. They understand that customer experience success is about customer experience management. It's about what happens inside the organization, not just what you talk about hoping happens on the outside of the organization. They also understand that every organization has its own definition of customer experience success. You've heard me say this before. It's never enough to say our goal is to provide a great customer experience. What does that mean? We have to get into the definition of what that really means. It's also really easy to say things like, oh, the customer is the boss, or we're customer first, or we're customer centric. But if we say those things and we don't act like it, that misalignment leads to not just misunderstanding, but not being able to meet those goals, not be able to deliver on those outcomes for our customers and the organization. And something that's become very, very important in today's world is that better customer experience actually creates a cycle for better employee experience. We are in the age of the great resignation. We are in the age where employees are really expecting a lot more from their employers. This is one of the ways that we can show up for our employees by providing a great customer experience and reflecting that in the employee experience. And frankly, there are countless ways that customer experience pays off. If we invest in customer experience in smart ways, in ways that we've defined success and we know what success looks like, we will get positive outcomes. It's one of the few things in business that is that consistent. We can always rely on it. There are so many different ways to get that ROI. And it's really important that as CX leaders, we continue to talk about that. So let's talk about this first one. Customer experience success, say that a bunch of times, is about customer experience management. And what this means is when we talk about customer experience, it's really important that we define that when we are talking about what is happening inside the organization, we're really talking about customer experience management. So sometimes I hear organizations say, we're starting customer experience. And I think, no, you're not. You've been providing a customer experience since you had your very first customer. The difference is the companies that invest in this, that really understand it, they understand that there are things we do inside the organization in order to deliver on that. So using these terms like customer experience management versus the customer experience that we're delivering can help leadership really understand that what we're talking about is something beyond just this aspirational talk of customer experience, or it's something we can't really control. Because there is this sometimes belief. I just heard a leader recently say, well, we found out that uh, our region wasn't doing as well, but somebody said, well, the other region is just happier. They just have happier people. It's really easy to get into that mindset where we think, well, that's just how customers are. And so what can we control about the customer experience? When we do this well, when we invest in customer experience management, what we're talking about is creating a cultural mindset so that everybody understands how important customer experience is and their role in it. It's a business strategy that will provide positive outcomes. So we have to talk about it in that way. And then really it's the discipline. It's a business discipline in order to achieve those outcomes and focus and deliver on that strategy. We have to start talking like this. We have to start making sure that our leadership understands that when we're talking about customer experience, it's not something that's just out there. It's something that we have a say in and we can be proactive about and treat it like any other part of the business. This is how we do business. Customer experience management is part of that. We also need to define success better. Now, I am a big believer, as you all know, in having a very well defined customer experience mission statement and a customer experience success statement. And these two tools can really help you define what success looks like in your organization. Your mission statement can't be, we want a positive customer experience. Anybody in the world can say that. What you want to do is get very specific about how do you show up for your customers every time, wherever they are on the journey, no matter what your products are. What does that look like? And you want to define what success looks like within your organization by defining the customer experience success statement. And that is where you really break down what are our organizational goals? What are our leadership goals? What will we do to provide a better customer experience to drive those goals forward? And how do we measure that success? Instead of just talking about metrics, instead of just talking about measurements, which is where a lot of organizations start, we want to start with what is that actually measuring so that we can show our progress and move those goals forward. So if you don't have those two things, I recommend you check out those workbooks that David just put the links up for. We have that at Year of CX. It can guide you through that process to create your own mission statement, your own success statement. But we want to make sure it's measurable and defined. So if your goals for the year are we're going to have happier customers, I would challenge you, how are you measuring that? What does that really mean? Because if you can't say that at the end of the year, if you can't say to your CEO, this is what we set out to do, and this is how we measured it, and this is how far we came, it's very easy to be dismissed as something that's soft, as something that doesn't provide the business the value that customer experience does. It's also really easy to say things like the customer is the boss or we're customer centric. But you know what? We are often in a situation where the higher up we get in an org chart, the further away we get from the customer. And so what this means is if your CEO, if your executive team is never really hearing from the customer, is never really connecting to what the actual experience is for the customer, it's very easy to get stuck in that land of metrics where all they see are charts and graphs going up and down, and they don't really understand the impact that that has on individual people. So, the best thing we can do as customer experience leaders is really tell the story of our customers using their real voice, carrying that forward to the executive team so that they're not just seeing hard number data, they're hearing directly from customers. The other thing that we want to do is hopefully expose different executives to the actual experience however we can. DoorDash, the food delivery service, just made some news because they reinstated their We Dash program. They ask every single person in the organization, in CEO on down, to actually deliver a food delivery once a month so that they really understand what their delivery drivers are going through, what it's like in a crowded restaurant, what it's like when you can't find an address, all of those things that are part of their experience. They stay connected that way. A lot of retailers ask executives to spend a day in the store. One of the things I will put a little caution here about is if it's once a year, that is easy to kind of gamify. And I've seen this done where they say, oh, you're an executive. Welcome to the team. We're going to put you in the back. You're going to do inventory for us where you can't really mess anything up. So if we do that, we're not really exposing the executives and the people who need to hear the story of the customer to the actual experience. So what I recommend is every time you report on the progress of customer experience, you're including the real voice of the customer. You're sharing a recording from your contact center. You're sharing a video. You are inviting a customer in to share their story. You're just providing verbatims or quotes. However, you can do that, we need to stay connected to the heart of who we are and not just the numbers, because executives can check out of those numbers. They can just worry about the number going up and kind of forget that, oh, yeah, we are having huge issues like, I don't know, supply chain disruption. What does that actually mean for the people that we're serving? What can we do about that? Where do we need to invest to make sure that we can improve the experience right there? All of that becomes much more important and urgent if you're actually exposed to that firsthand or hearing the voice of the customer. Better customer experiences create this virtuous cycle because it creates better employee experiences. And right now, this is one of the top priorities of pretty much every organization. How do we keep our employees? How do we make sure that we're hiring great employees? How do we not lose them right after they get trained? All of those things are true concerns right now in the marketplace. And so, if you're thinking about customer experience as a priority, as something that is a strategy and a mindset, that also translates to a better employee experience. This is because of a few different reasons. One is nobody wants to work in a place where customers are complaining and you're not delivering. Not only do they not want to work there, they don't want to refer people to work there. Employee referrals serve you so well. They are more likely to be hired. They are more likely to be hired more quickly, and they are more likely to stay longer. So, employee referrals are a huge advantage in today's market. Employees will not refer other people if they don't believe that you are providing a great customer experience, if they don't really see that the company is living their mission for their customers. So that's part of this. The other part is that using customer experience best practices, we can actually apply that to the employee journey. So, understanding the employee journey helps us provide exactly what employees want, which right now, today, they're asking for learning and development. They're asking for feedback cycles. They want to feel heard. And so, providing employee feedback and then making sure we close the loop with them, making sure that we understand what are the needs of somebody who's been with us 90 days versus 9 years. Those needs are different. Let's make sure we address those. So there are so many ways that providing a great customer experience leads the way for your employee experience as well. And of course, if the CEO believes in a positive customer experience and a positive employee experience, that's going to make everything easier. So talk to your CEO about how, providing this great customer experience lifts everybody up in the organization. If they get on board with that and they start sharing that word throughout your organization, people will really start investing more in not just their job, but in the organization overall and in the customer journey overall as well. And finally, there are so many ways customer experience pays off, and we still don't talk about them enough. You just heard me talk about employees. I need some water, excuse me. That hasn't happened in a while. Um, so, when we talk about return on investment for customer experience, we are talking about real dollars and cents. If we can improve retention, if we can reduce customer churn, if we can reduce service cost, all of that means real money for the organization. We have to keep talking about that. We also want to talk about those employee perks. We want to talk about how it's easier to hire people. Customer referrals do the same for us as employee referrals. They make everything else easier. They lower acquisition cost. We If we can talk about ROI in this way, we will get the CEO's attention. Sorry, I'm having a little tickle in my throat today. So, 5 things that you can talk to your CEO about, and also that you can really reinforce. If you already have a customer centric CEO, make sure you're reinforcing these messages throughout your conversations with them, your presentations to the executive team. Because bottom line here, great CEOs get there because they care about people. They care about their customers. They care about their employees. So if you have a great CEO who just hasn't quite seen the light, that's an opportunity. You can talk to them about how that intuitive care, that organic care that they have for people actually can translate into business success. And that by investing in customer experience management, they're going to be able to see those outcomes that they want. They're going to be able to feel and hear from people that they are showing how they care about them. CEOs really do care about this. And so that is part of the message as well. So at this point, I'm going to drink some more water while we get some questions and find out what's your CEO like and what do you have to ask us?
Yeah, absolutely. We've got some good questions. I want to start with one from Maxine. Maxine says, so very true. And because of the lack of understanding of the customer experience at the C suite level, experts are underutilized, resulting in repeated department restructuring. So, what if you don't have access to the organization's CEO?
Mm.
How can you still create that change?
Yeah, love this question, Maxine. Thank you for asking it. Yeah, so I would say a couple things. One is this is about coalition building, and sometimes we have to do that kind of starting at one layer and then moving on up. So, however, you can build coalitions with the leaders who you know can take action where you need them to take action. So, for example, if you are getting customer data that something is wrong or something is not working along the journey regarding their digital experience, Start building those coalitions with those digital leaders so that then you can start showing those wins. You can start saying, we worked together, we solved this problem, this is the result. If you get them excited about that, and if you are able to share those results as part of the work that you did as well as what they did, then that will start growing throughout your organization. So look for the people who have influence, who have the ability to actually take action and hold people accountable, and start really getting to know them and sharing with them, this is what we're finding, this is what I think we should do. Let's go ahead and help you get what you need as well, leader, so that we can work together on this. The other thing that some organizations have are these CX champion programs, CX advocate, whatever you call it, but essentially offering people the opportunity to really understand customer experience and represent the customer and the customer experience management ideas within their own teams. So this can happen when some people do this from a volunteer basis. I have some issues with that, but it does happen where they say this is an addition to your job, but come to a lunch and learn once a month, and then you bring that education back. That's another way to kind of spread this throughout the organization. And then I really appreciate that you said experts are underutilized. That's a communication thing. We need to start tooting our own horn a little bit more and saying, if we have a great uh, data analyst on our team and nobody really uses that because they just don't know it is around, or they don't know what that person is capable of, that's a great thing to reach out to your internal communications team, reach out to your learning and development team and say, we have this great resource. Let's go ahead and use more of this so that we can educate people and get people to really understand what we're capable of here. So it's all about that coalition building. And I always feel bad saying that because so much of it is on the CX leader in a way that isn't on other leaders. But really, every successful CX leader that I've talked to, this is the number one thing they say. They say, I built coalitions, I understood my colleagues, I understood my leadership, and I worked according to what was most important to them. That's what we have to do.
Got a comment and a question from Gaurav that I really like. First, let's go with the comment, which is that CX, if managed well, becomes like a Tetris game where all the pieces fit together in terms of client requisition and
Love it.
client wins. I really like that visual.
I was like
Um,
transported back to my first computer.
yeah, yeah. Uh, and then as far as the question, um, he says, I see that top management is sometimes overwhelmed. So they understand and value CX, but they also are so overwhelmed by it, requiring minute
Mm,
details and journey maps and ways to measure it. So it's kind of, to mix my metaphors here, kind of a chicken and egg situation. How do we get the C level all of the information they need
mhm.
to get buy-in when we need that buy-in to get that information?
Yeah.
Where do we start?
I would start with those foundational pieces. It's really easy to say, "Let's journey map. Let's measure this." I just heard from a client who said they went from 50 points of measurement and they were narrowing it down to 12. And I was like, "Here, here," because they realized that they were measuring all this stuff to what end, right? Like, you can measure whatever you want. You can watch numbers go up and down all day. But if you don't know what's most important to your organization, then it's really easy to get lost in that minutia. So start with the, what is your mission here? What are you trying to do for customers? Always focus on that. And then what are you trying to do for your organization and your leadership? And how do those two things come together to help you prioritize? So start with that big picture. Start with figuring out, who are we? Who do we want to be? And how will we measure that? And then narrow down and say, executive, we could do a journey map right now. Let's talk about the goal. Let's talk about the scope. Let's talk about what actions are we willing to take right after that journey map? Because journey mapping, or measuring for measuring's sake, or journey mapping for journey mapping's sake, it's not productive. And so we need to get really clear about what are the goals and help everybody define that. And if they say, we want a journey map because we want to, I don't know, add a product or something, great. Let's talk about that product. What are we trying to do for that customer? Does it support that mission? Does it support that success statement? If you can start articulating this in ways that they understand that you are looking out for not just the customer experience, but also the business, that's when you start getting some buy-in to, okay, we can do all of these things, but we need to prioritize and we need to focus on our goals. What are we really doing? Um, there are global organizations that I've worked with who literally had no goals in customer experience. They they just didn't. Their goal were things like we're going to improve NPS. Great. That's a measurement. That's a measurement. So, what does that really mean? And how will that support the organization? We need to get very clear on that. And if we can do that, we can start moving the conversation forward and lifting customer experience up throughout the organization because otherwise it gets stuck in that kind of metrics management place. And that really doesn't do anything for the organization or for your customers. So we need to advocate for our customers by saying, what are we really trying to do here? And let's do it.
I love that. Let's pull in a question that we got from email this week. I hear the term customer centric all the time, but what does it really mean?
I love this question. Yeah. So when this is such a great question because in some places it really doesn't mean anything. Let's be honest. It's all talk. But when it's done well, what that means is that instead of being driven by pure profit, by pure product development, we are focused, we are centered on the customer. So the customer becomes an important part of every decision in the organization. If we're truly customer centric, that means that sometimes we are willing to take some short-term losses for the long-term gain because we know it will benefit the customer. We know it will benefit our organization. Now, in traditional public companies, they're driven by quarterly results. That can be really, really challenging because they're going to be driven by short-term activity in order to drive those short-term results. When you're customer centric, you have to kind of narrow your focus and make sure that you are examining how will this impact the customer? How will this drive our business forward without sacrificing the customer experience? So that's what it really means is getting that customer at the center of every decision you make as an organization. In certain industries, that is a new concept. They were driven by product. They were driven by shareholder value. They were driven by all these other things. And so that's why sometimes it's so hard to get there because they've had literally decades or more um, time where they've been focused on everything but the customer. And so that's why culturally it can feel like, oh gosh, what are we doing here? This is hard work because we're really shifting from a long legacy of not focusing on the customer and then putting them into the center of our decision making, of our business processes, of our goals, of our defining our outcomes, all of those things. So that's what customer centric really means.
Love it. I love that we now have that quote. We can just send people a link to that explanation in the future. Um, let's do another question from email this week.
Mhm.
This question asks, it says, everyone taking part in the great resignation right now is going to end up seeking another position elsewhere. How can we position our organization as one that employees will want to work
Hmm.
for potential new hires? Is it just about salary and flexible work from home options, or is there more to it?
Uh, yes and yes. So obviously, people do care about salary. People very much today want flexible work options. But I always take that a step back and say, if you have that customer experience mission, if you really know who you are and who you want to be for your customers, include that from the very beginning of the employee journey, which means it's in the job posting. It's when you're interviewing, when you're going through that candidate experience, you're reinforcing that mission and saying this is who we are and this is how we show up. And then make sure that their journey from the beginning reflects that. So, what I mean by that is if your customer experience mission includes something about responding quickly or caring about customers or anything like that, if you don't treat candidates that way, that's a misalignment of those values. And so make sure that when you are looking at your candidate experience, your employee journey, that you are really putting that out first, because that will not only tell people this is who we are and what we expect, but then you're going to attract those candidates who say, wow, that's something I really believe in. That's something I could really get behind. So I think that's super important in today's market. I would also say again, reflect customer experience best practices in your employee experience, meaning have feedback loops, have ways that you are closing the loop if an employee gives you feedback. Make sure that you are asking for input around innovation. Co- Employees have incredible ideas. Sometimes they just don't have anywhere to put them. And by giving them opportunities to really provide innovation around the customer experience, they will get more invested in that. They will see that, you know what, they have a say in what goes on. Recognizing what employees do in their day to day lives that contribute to the customer experience, not just your customer facing folks, but everybody in the organization. I think all of us in the last few years have learned how important some of these people who are technically behind the scenes really are. One of my favorite examples of this is in healthcare. The people who clean the rooms in healthcare have more impact on patient outcomes than the doctor who visits them once a day. And that's because if you don't have a really clean space, that can increase infection and all sorts of things. Well, by recognizing those people and saying, you know what, you are doing really important work, their satisfaction is going to go up. They're going to feel more invested in what is actually happening at that workplace. So, making sure that we're connecting the dots for employees as well is really, really critical. But really look at your employee journey. We have a employee journey tool that is part of our Year of CX program. And it can help you really understand, how do we map this out in a way, and how do we hear from employees in the right way? So there are all sorts of ways to really do that, but stick with that mission, get back to that mission, make sure you're living that throughout the employee journey.
And, Jeannie, sometimes things just align and it's wonderful and beautiful. And this is one of those cases. As I was asking that last question, we got another great question from Cassandra from the perspective of
Oh, love
somebody,
it.
a prospective hire. So she asks, how do I ask a recruiter if a company
Mhm.
is customer centric? I'm looking for a job and I want to make sure I focus on this aspect of a prospective employer.
Love this.
Yeah,
Oh, that is like perfect synergy right there.
right?
Uh, so I would say ask them about I would start from the beginning of saying, customer experience is really important to me. How do you reflect that? How do you define customer experience success? And in this role, how will I be able to contribute to customer experience success? And then I would also ask them what are the goals that they have as an organization? If they are all profit driven, then that tells you something. If they are all product driven, that tells you something. So I would look for those things that are associated with, we there are absolutely organizations that are focused on the customer experience and they have big goals around that. Look for that as well. And then I would also ask about the employee journey. How are the ways that employees are asked to provide feedback throughout their tenure? How are they how do you plan your learning and development and professional development programs? Because you want to make sure that's custom and personalized as well. So I would ask questions like that and see what they come back with, because if they are stumped, that really, really tells you that they're not really focused on that like other organizations might be. Now, I say that, and I have to give a little shout out here because my husband has spent his career in recruiting. And I know that sometimes the recruiting person is one step away from the actual organization or the leader. And so be aware of that as you're asking those questions. If they don't know right away, that could just be because they're a little further out than the people who you would actually be working with. So that's a little asterisk about hiring experience. But good luck. That sounds exciting. Let us know what you find out.
Yeah, I love that. I love just going into the process with that as a priority.
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
We've got one more question that came in from email this week that I want to get to. This is a good one. They say, we've made some journey maps and we do collect some voice of the customer data, but it doesn't really feel like we're doing anything with it or doing quote unquote CX management.
Mm.
Where do we start?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, this is what I was talking about. A lot of times it's easy to get stuck in that metrics measurement and call that CX or call that CX management, but that's not really managing anything. That's just measuring. And so when we think about management, we want to make sure that we understand what the strategy is. What are we trying to do? And then build tactics around that. Sometimes we reverse that in customer experience. And so we say, well, we're going to start measuring and we're going to journey map, but we haven't really defined what the strategy is overall. So start by defining your CX strategy. What are you trying to do? What are the goals? What are the outcomes you're looking for? And then drive down. If you're already in that kind of metrics cycle, what I would do is pick a few of those and figure out what are we really trying to measure here and how can we influence that. So if you're tasked with NPS, let's say, or customer satisfaction rate or whatever, um, if you're tasked with, improving those numbers, back up and figure out how can we really do that? What can we influence? What is going right for the customer that maybe we can turn up the volume on, or what isn't working for the customer that we need to address? And then create outcomes around that. Once you do that, then you can start sharing with people how, yes, we're obviously looking at improving these numbers over here. But the only way that will happen is if we address the issues that's causing the dissatisfaction or the detractors. So that's how I would address that. And I'm going to say it again, folks. Go back to those foundational pieces. How do you know what success looks like? If you are not starting there, you are not setting up for success. So back up, define success, communicate that, provide all of your goals and priorities to drive those outcomes that are part of that definition of success for you in the organization. It's heavy lifting in the beginning, though. I will be honest.
Yeah. Well, that's going to do it for our questions today. I'm going to throw out another shout out here for a year of CX. It includes the CX Success Statement Workbook and a whole bunch of other resources that are free
Mhm.
and helpful. Otherwise, I just want to thank everybody again for the questions. I love these sessions because we come in with a topic and we come in with some prepared ideas, and then the questions and the comments take
Mhm.
the conversation into territories that we would never anticipate. And it's so cool to see every week. And I just love
It is.
seeing what we're going to end up talking about every week. So
I
thank
know.
you for being here and bringing your questions and comments and making this what it is.
Yes, well said. And I totally agree. I think it's so cool to really hear from people all over the world who are challenging these ideas, right? You're the ones who are in the trenches doing these things. And so it's so exciting to hear about some of the things that you're doing and some of the questions that you're bringing to the table. I think customer experience is maturing as we speak. And part of that is because of the people here. So thank you to everybody for being here. And thank you, David. You always do such a great job too. So thank you.
Absolutely. And Jeannie, if people want to connect with you, how can they do that?
Yes, please do. You can find us at experienceinvestigators.com. Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, Twitter, all those good places. And then if you do want those resources, they're all at yearofcx.com. And if you are looking for something, if you need support, if you're looking for a resource, let us know that too, because we're always looking to provide value to the leaders that are out there like you. The mission of our company is to create fewer ruined days for customers. And by being here today, by asking these incredible questions, by being part of this community, you are helping us live that mission. So thank you so much for all that you do. I look forward to hearing from you. I look forward to supporting you. We will be back in 2 weeks with another live session. So I hope we will see you there. Thanks, everybody.